How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. Let's go over all the books I read this week. That's right, it's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. A lot of good books. We're going to go over what came out this week. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. So thank you very much for stopping in. We're going to go over all the books I read this week, and I'm going to go ahead and put the cover for that book up on this grading bar right here so you can see how they all stack up against each other. And honestly, it wasn't a bad week. There were a couple bangers out there, a couple duds like always, but let's go over what I thought about these books. We're going to start with Marvel first. We have Amazing Spider-Man issue number 9. And of course, in classic ASM style right now, we're a little bit behind. We're a little bit dull, honestly. We're actually going back, not even to the latest event that's happening with the Eternals and everything else in the Judgment Day. We're actually going to go back even further to the Gala for some reason. And we're kind of seeing the Gala through Peter Parker's eyes. He's kind of, having all these different conversations, or maybe not so much conversations, with the different people. There's some comedic elements in here. And of course, it all leads up to the big realization that Moira McTaggart has taken over Mary Jane's body, and him and Wolverine go on this big adventure to kind of go rescue her in a way. And of course, they get into some trouble. They get some help with some other mutants and stuff. It's just a weird issue, honestly, because we're not even in the Gala anymore. The Gala was a few months ago at this point. So it's kind of like left everyone's mind. We're on to the next thing. Yet this issue apparently was written, the release schedule maybe made it all jacked up. I don't know. Redeeming factor in here, the art style is actually not that bad. And I started to look at it, I'm like, wait a minute, this actually is pretty good. I do like that. And all of a sudden I'm realizing Patrick Gleason's doing the art in here, and I'm trying to see where JR is even on here. It looks like he's on the cover. Yeah, I see that wonky face. So he's definitely on there, but I see Patrick Gleason. I see a whole bunch of other people with the cover or variants and whatnot, but the artist says Patrick Gleason, which is pretty interesting because I was like, wow, he actually nailed the art. It actually looks a little bit different. But then I'm like, wait, is that really his art style? It looks like he's kind of imitating his faces from time to time. I don't know what's going on. Pretty interesting art. I did like that. The story, though, it's way behind, man. It's not even in the current event that we're in. It's like 2 events behind. Everyone kind of forgot about what the hell Moira's doing, or Sinister, or anybody else at this point, because we've been so derailed for like the last month or so. If you want to flash back to like 2 months ago and see what was going on with Spider-Man, this is the issue for you. If not, go ahead and skip it. All right, we're going to dive over to a number 2, which is from Ed Bryson. This is Predator issue number 2. And again, it's a pretty interesting book. Not so heavy on the Predator just yet, but we do have a compelling female character here who's a little bit on this like revenge mission towards a specific Predator who took out her family when she was young. She's grown up, she's hardened, she's a great fighter now, and now she's hunting the Predators, which I think is pretty interesting. Of course, she's got that quirky, like a little sidekick. I talk about this from time to time. It's always fun when a main character has a little sidekick. It's like a sentient, like AI or something like that to bounce dialogue and comedy and, comedic elements off of. So that's pretty fun. So basically she's on this mission right now. She's traveling from planet to planet. She just kind of sustained some injuries to her ship. She needs to repair it. She's on a remote island. She runs into some local trouble, and she kind of spots her next predator prey here in this issue. So pretty interesting. It's not, again, very heavy on the Predator just yet. Compelling story still. Art's pretty interesting. I do like that. Dialogue is fun. It's not muddy. Has some comedic elements to it. It's serious when it needs to be. It does get gory from time to time, even without predators, because there's other threats out there. So it's not like it's completely lacking that element. It has the potential to ramp up. I do like the story, and I like the writing style in this book. So that's really kind of making me excited to keep going with this one, even though it doesn't have too much predator in it just yet. So that's what I'm thinking about that one. I'm trying to find something that would be good to show from an artistic perspective. You can take a peek at what this looks like here, in case you don't know what the interior art looks like. Yeah, I do dig it. It's pretty cool. So yeah, check out Predator. I think it's a decent book right now. It's only 2 issues in. We'll see where it goes, if it has any legs, what the overall story is. This is a revenge mission after all. So we assume that she's going to get her revenge at some point. So we'll see how the actual story plays out, though. Predator, not a bad read. Next book we read this week was Axe Judgment Day. We have issue number 4 from Karen Gillan. And again, we're back in this big event that's happening right now. And this is kind of the main book to go over everything. Of course, there's tie-ins galore, except for ASM. They're still back in the gala before all this even happened for some reason, like I said before. But it's an interesting book. It's very, very well drawn, and the coloring is beautiful in this book. There's a lot going on in here. We have like a celestial point of view talking about the different characters in the Marvel Universe, heroes, and sometimes they're just citizens. And they have a little bit of commentary about their personality, their style, their thought processes, and they give these judgments as thumbs up or thumbs down in the background. It's kind of fun how they do that in here. But ultimately, it's just another event. And we're going to get through it, of course, but the end has a really shocking end at it, and it's very dramatic. It's really intense. I did not see it coming necessarily. Maybe I did see it coming, but maybe not played out like that. So, of course, we got all of our heroes teaming up right now, trying to figure out a way to get around these rules, this judgment rule that was put in place. Captain America was given the thumbs down, so what hope do we have for other people? But the judgment is really not that fair, and the criteria used is a little bit sketchy. Essentially Cyclops walks up to this thing and says, listen, you give me the thumbs up or I'm going to send my girl Jean at you and you know what's going to happen then. And he's like, oh yeah, dude, you get a thumbs up. It's that kind of stuff. It's really weird. And some of the monologue from the character, the internal monologue as he's judging some of the other random characters throughout this place or throughout the world. It's just kind of has a funny, almost comedic element to it, which is just not what you'd expect from a godlike character who's just black and white, apparently. And so, it didn't really play from that perspective, but the book is drawn really, really well. It does have its moments where the action's just intense, and the ending, the last page in this issue, is really intense. I did not see it coming. Probably my most enjoyed issue so far in the whole Axe Judgment Day event, even with the tie-ins and things like that. Pretty fun issue, I thought, overall. But let me know what you're thinking about this event in general. Are you digging it, or are you just kind of waiting for the next thing to happen? Next Marvel book we have this week, highly anticipated for me, is Daredevil. We have issue number 3, and I love this street-level hero Marvel stuff going on right now. Moon Knight's a really good book. Punisher's a very, very good Marvel book, and Daredevil's really good as well. It's too bad Spider-Man can't keep up. I promise I'm going to stop bragging on Spider-Man here in just a little bit. We're almost out of Marvel right now. It's just such a shame they can't get that freaking book right. Anyway, so Daredevil's really cool. Of course, we saw Daredevil in the end of the Blast Punisher issue, which we were really, really excited for, and we can't wait to get into that storyline. And I believe it was the first issue, maybe the second issue of Daredevil. We had a little bit of Elektra and Stick action in there. Since then, we've kind of abandoned them. We don't really know what's going on. They left them in such a weird spot. They were under attack by the Hand. And so we haven't really seen Daredevil team up with them, although we know the story's heading in that direction soon. And this book is kind of one of the bridges to get there. It's just kind of weird the way that this book is rolling out with Punisher right now, because Punisher seems to be farther ahead in the timeline, but Daredevil's still hanging out in Hell's Kitchen, doing Hell's Kitchen stuff with his friends, with Luke and Cole and the Stormwinds and things like that. But he's heading in his journey right now. He's just taking his time getting there, and he keeps getting interrupted with all these little side missions. So whatever. We're heading in that direction, man. We got Punisher on the front. He's still rocking his Hand Punisher logo. I guess Ares has finally adopted his Punisher logo full time. Of course, we got Elektra on here too. Pretty cool. We got a bunch of Hand people in here. Looks like they're all fighting them. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Again, it's Daredevil kind of wrapping up last minute things. He's getting with Cole. Cole's the detective and the cop that he met in the previous Devil's Reign arc that happened, and he got a relationship with him. Cole was hunting him down. They kind of found common ground towards the end of that run, and now he's kind of relying on Cole to kind of maybe be a street level hero with him and help him take on greater causes beyond just thugs and stuff like that. That conversation doesn't go great. Neither does this conversation with Luke Cage, who's his scope has broadened a lot. He's not just punch in hand anymore. He's actually meeting with people, trying to impose real change in the city as mayor. And so he has a little bit of conflict about Daredevil's mission as well and can't really join him. And then towards the end of this book, we do see Daredevil kind of heading in a direction where he's going to be going back on his little journey to meet up with Elektra and with Stick and go take on the Hand, get with Frank Castle. And we're going to actually see what we want to see from that interaction. So again, it's a book of him just hanging out in Hell's Kitchen, doing Hell's Kitchen stuff on his way to where the Hand is. So we're inching our way towards that in the Daredevil book, but in the Punisher book, we're already there. So a little bit of a weird timing gap right there, I would say. It's still a great book. Check it out. Daredevil, amazing run, amazing character, highly recommended. All right, so that was actually it for Marvel. We're going to hop over into DC next, a book that I was really looking forward to. We have Mark Waid on Batman vs. Robin, issue number 1. This is actually somewhat of a continuation of World's Finest, the Mark Waid run, and Dan Mora did the art. This is actually a continuation of that. There was one weird issue of World's Finest, I think it was issue number 6, where they go back in time to save Robin because he got lost in the time stream. He's like joined the circus and stuff like that. You can skip that issue. That issue doesn't mean anything. This one right here brings us back into like, I don't know, I don't want to say current time, but a more present time. And this is actually a possessed Robin attacking Batman. And we learn throughout the story why that's the case. Why would the Robin be doing that? And so it is a pretty interesting little thing at the very end. We get all the answers. There's a lot of magic people involved in this one. Of course, we have Zatanna on here, but we do touch base with some of the other magic users as well, like Constantine and like Swamp Thing even. And they're actually doing something extremely huge in this book. And I don't know if it's quite real yet. I'm not going to spoil what's going on in here, but if you've been following the main Batman runs, you need to be reading this issue, I think. So we'll see if it's actually the case. And yeah, it could be a huge turn of events in here. We don't exactly know just yet, although there's a lot of magic involved here. So I don't know how real things are right now because magic is really elusive, but it's at least very creative. It's a very creative book. Again, all the magic users right here are pretty much like neutered at the moment. And there's a reason, and we know the reason towards the end of the book. So high stakes, lots going on. Dan Mora is doing a great job with this run. I recommend World's Finest, except for the last issue of that, and then jump right into here. If you didn't read World's Finest, you're going to be a little bit lost as to the reason why things are happening in this book, but it's a little bit of a gap that you can probably make up pretty quickly. But yeah, check this one out if you're a Batman fan, especially if you've been reading the main Batman run over the last year or two. Next DC book we read was Jurassic League. This is actually issue number 5 of 6, and I kind of gotta be honest, I'm a little bit excited for this book to be over with because as fun and novel as this book is from Daniel Warren Johnson and Gideon on art, it's nothing that's super groundbreaking. It was kind of fun the first 2 or 3 issues to see like the different versions of the characters and how they transformed them into Jurassic versions of themselves, and they brought up some of the villains and stuff. But now I've kind of lost the allure a little bit of this run. I'm kind of glad there's only one more issue left. You know, we have our big Darkseid character, the Jurassic version of that character is now up and like attacking the Masquerade, and so we get all of our heroes teaming up, and we have, you know, our Superman moment where he learns his history and learns his purpose and joins the ranks, and now they're all attacking as one unified front towards this Darkseid character. Again, 1 issue left. It's still fun. It's still interesting. Art style has got that Daniel Warren Johnson vibe, but it's not him doing it. So you do get kind of tricked into thinking that from time to time. But I mean, it's still fun. It's still entertaining. It's still a book that I don't dread reading. It's just like maybe lost its novelty just a little bit. What are you guys thinking about Jurassic League? Is it still hanging in there for you? We only got 1 more issue. What are you thinking in general? All right, that's actually it for the big 2. We have a bunch of variety of indie books to cover. We're going to go over into AWA Upshot. AWA has put out some great stuff. I've said it pretty much every week where a book has come out from them. We have Sacrament issue number 2 from Peter Milligan. And this is actually a really fun book. It's essentially this book, it's a look into the future, and it's a look about how Christianity might be done, how society changes being multiplanetary. And so we get a little bit of an exploration about how religion evolves. And they touch on everything from worship to communion to just faith in general. We follow this priest in here who's kind of lost his way, lost his faith over time. He was part of an exorcism when he was really young. He was like an assistant priest while this was going on. Didn't really go very well. He was kind of freaking out at the moment, if you can imagine. Anyway, he's got a lot of emotional, religious baggage that he pulls with him right now. And he's kind of put in a situation right now where he needs to do this next exorcism or essentially die. And so he's kind of being held hostage in this way, and this evil is kind of resurfaced that he tried to face when he was younger. Very weird premise, but it works really well. The characters are done really well. Peter Milligan does a great job of with the dialogue and with you just understanding the character. Like, you can almost put yourself in their shoes in a way. There's high stakes. The art style really works too, because there's some like demonology stuff in here, and it does work when it's presented. It is sci-fi in a way. It's maybe it's more like Star Wars-ish, you know. It has like these really advanced cities, and it looks like very cold and dark and things like that. But again, there's like this demonic element that's resurfaced, and our priest here has to go back to his old ways and try to bring that back out of him to save the day, or else he's basically going to be taken out, and people that he loved too will be taken out. Interesting book. So I would highly recommend this one too. I'll give you a little taste of the art style in here. It's a pretty interesting book. Again, it's only 5 issues, and we're 2 issues in right now, but check it out. If you see this one on the shelf and that sounds like something you might want to get into, it doesn't bog it down with a lot of like heavy dialogue or anything like that. So I would give it a shot if you see it in your shop. Check out Sacrament. It's a pretty good read so far. All right, we're going to go into the next book. We have IDW, Darkspace's Wildfire from Scott Snyder. And of course, you can tell it's a Scott Snyder book from like the first page you read in this. What's interesting about this overall story is we were actually given the ending of this run in the first issue, and now they backtracked, did a very good job of easing us into all the different characters. We got to learn their backstories, how they work together as a team, as this firefighting unit for wildfires in California. And so it's actually really fun to see how that's all evolved. He does a really good job of building characters. And so he does a really good job of that of all of his runs, and it's no different in here. But again, we kind of saw the ending in issue number 1, and we're slowly working our way towards that. We have this heist that they kind of set up. They see this house in the path of this wildfire. They realize it's kind of a rich person's house. This guy's like a millionaire, and he's got a lot of cryptocurrency. They develop this plan to steal this currency, but things kind of go haywire, and their things are not what they thought when they get inside this house. And now they're kind of under the attack right now. And I think there's a larger thing at play. There's like a big cover-up happening right now. And so it is kind of fun to see this play out, although I'm wondering if we're just going to end this run with how we saw it ending in the first issue. So basically, we're going to learn this whole story and then be like, oh, well, okay, we already knew the end. We already knew the end of this in issue number 1. So I'm wondering if they're going to do that, or maybe they'll tease us and bring us into a different conclusion. I don't know. But Hayden Sherman's on this as well. The art style is really cool. It's very vibrant. It's very bright. The paneling is very creative. It's not very formulaic or anything like that. It uses the space really well. I'll give you a little tease of the paneling right here. It's pretty fun to use a whole page like that and to kind of come up on the diagonal over on this other side, just to kind of make things flow really well. So pretty cool book. I mean, I would check it out if I were you. Again, it's a Scott Snyder book, so it's not going to be bad at all. Lots of good world building, character building. Check it out. All right, we're going to jump over into Dark Horse. We have a new book from Kevin Smith called Masquerade, and it's also co-written by Andy McElfresh, if I'm not mistaken, on here. And what an interesting, weird book. It's basically showing you kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a Hell's Kitchen type of a town. It's a town that's been really thrown into the gutter. It was promised to be like a utopia, and of course it just went to complete hell. But there's like this one spotlight beacon of this really rich guy who kind of runs the middle area there. It's kind of like a Wayne Manor or a Wayne Tower in the middle of Gotham, kind of a situation in here. And what's funny is we actually touch base with a few different characters in here who've got their... they kind of work in the entertainment industry a little bit, and they're really kind of not maybe jealous, but kind of angry at some of the success some social media lady's been getting. She's like getting her own TV show, and it's like, I went to film school and I did all this stuff, and all she did was go on TikTok and she got famous or whatever. There's a little bit more behind that character we learn as the issue goes on. She's actually in town for some mysterious reason, kind of going undercover. We understand what that means towards the end of the book. And so it has a interesting little twist at the end, I suppose. It's not the strongest of books. I did have a decent time reading it, but it's not something I'm super excited about. The art style is not that great, to be honest with you. The characters are all kind of weird looking. There's no real detail in this book at all, and everything is just kind of blah. I don't know. The coloring's decent, but just the art style and the detail that they use is kind of like, I don't know. Overall, it was an okay story. Again, the art was kind of wonky. The writing was okay. I haven't really read anything else from Kevin Smith, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did Daredevil and stuff like that, but I didn't read any of that. Let me know what you're thinking about Masquerade. Probably a book I'm not going to keep reading, but I wanted to check the pulse and see what was going on with it. But yeah, let me know if you read this one, what you thought. All right, we're going to jump over into Aftershock next. We have Samurai Doggy issue number 2. I read issue number 1 digitally because I couldn't get it at my shop. But this is actually from Chris Tex, and we have Santos on the art, I believe. Both people I do not have a lot of familiarity with, but this is a pretty cool book, although this issue kind of sets us back just a little bit. The first issue was great. It was following our main character, the samurai Doggy. The dude is like insane. It kind of reminds me of Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to Be Kin. The dude's like insane. He's just outnumbered, outgunned, but he still just completely kicks ass, and the art style is really fun. This follows that same vein, I think, but we haven't really seen that character do all that crazy stuff just yet, but what he's done so far is pretty fun. The perspective of this issue, issue number 2, is of somebody else, kind of like this alien dude. He's just trying to look for some fun. He's going to the same little carnival. He wants to get on this ride. He's looking for drugs or whatever it is. And he kind of gets into his own little skirmish with some local guys or whatever. And then he notices that all these guys are rushing towards the samurai Doggy, and the big battle that we saw initiated in issue number 1 is kind of playing out in front of this guy here too. So, you know, did it give us some additional context about some other perspectives in the crowd? Maybe introducing a main character that's going to team up with him in the future? Maybe. We'll see how issue number 3 and 4 and so on goes and how the story plays out. But at the surface level, this issue was kind of irrelevant until we realize where the story is going to go and if this character is going to be a main character going forward. Crazy good art style still. I like that a lot. I'll give you a little hint of what that looks like here so you can see what we're dealing with. Pretty fun, man. I would check it out, especially if this book goes on a little bit. It's pretty fun so far, but I think this issue right here kind of sets up a case where it needs to prove itself in issue number 3 and 4 to really get us back into that, to really sink its teeth into us. But Samurai Doggy, cool concept, cool style, interesting art. We'll see if this issue was relevant in the next few issues, I think. All right, we're going to dip into some Image comics. We have a few of those. That'll wrap up the evening. So we have Love Everlasting from Tom King. And I didn't know this is actually a series of stories he's put out before or something like that. I don't really know the history of Love Everlasting, but I was told that this was something before at least. So pretty interesting book. Again, there's not a lot of explanation about what's going on in here, but the basic premise here is Joan, this female character that's right here, is kind of living these different lives right now, and the men that are in her life fall deeply, madly in love with her. And at first she kind of falls for it. She's like, oh, this is great. I can't believe it. But then there's some weird time jumps in the first issue, and that the same pattern rolls forward again and again and again. And then towards the end of that issue, she starts kind of getting wise to it. She's just like, oh no, where am I? Why am I here again? And this guy's fallen for me. What about the other guy that I knew from another lifetime? And she starts noticing that something is wrong. She's almost like in this repetitive hell in a way. And so this issue here, you think you're going down that same path, but right towards the end, you actually get a little bit of a twist. She actually is a little bit more wise than she was in the first issue. So we're seeing that play out a little bit. I do wish that there's a little bit more of that, a little bit more in the front half of this book, but we see it kind of play out at the end. I fear this is going to be one of those real slow boils, those real slow churns to kind of get to the point. But pretty cool book. I like the premise of it. It's just kind of dragging just a little bit. But, you know, I don't know how many issues this is going to be. If it's going to be a 5-6 issue run, something like that, I think the pacing is going to be okay. We'll see definitely how the next issue goes, because, again, it's a pretty interesting dilemma. Art style, I'll give you a little hint of that. It's got like this old romantic art style. This story here was set back in like, I don't know, 1800, something like that. And so we basically have like a Romeo and Juliet type situation here with our two lovebirds. And yeah, interesting end for sure. The ending was pretty cool in this book. The execution's a little bit slow. It's Tom King, so we gotta work our way through that. But yeah, pretty cool premise so far. If you've read other Love Everlasting stuff, is this a retelling? Is this in addition to, or is this like the comic book form of what we've already had before? Let me know if you know. All right, we're gonna jump over to Above Snakes. This is issue number 3 from Sean Lewis and Hayden Sherman. Hayden Sherman, who drew the Darkspace's Wildfire book. Very, very different art style here. In fact, if you did not know that he did both of those books, you wouldn't be criticized for not knowing it was him, because the art style is so different, I think. The coloring, I think, is a little bit similar, but there's a big difference, I would say, in this book, even from that perspective. So again, a pretty interesting book. This is going to be an issue basically where we meet with our main character. He actually has that weird ghost bird with him that, again, he can bounce his dialogue off of. I like when they do that, but it seems like I'm picking up that pattern with a lot of books right now, but it works from a narrative perspective. So we have that. We learned some pretty cool things about the bird in here. He's actually like a hopeless romantic trying to find his love. He has hasn't done that before. They're kind of going on this mission to kind of find him a mate at the moment, and they think they found one, but they meet somebody else in the same position as our main character here. He's on his revenge mission to take out the above snakes. And we learn a little bit about the connection with these ghost birds and what that all means and how you get rid of them and why you have them to begin with. So this book actually provided a little bit of context as to how that relationship forms, which I thought was pretty interesting. There's a cool dilemma here that we have to deal with now, knowing these other characters exist. There wasn't like a villain really in this issue. It was just basically meeting somebody else that's on the same mission that you are, and only one of you can complete it, so what are you going to do, kind of a thing, you know? So kind of like a false villain was introduced on here. But again, pretty cool art style. I'll give you a hint of what that looks like. Again, you can kind of see a little bit of a resemblance from maybe a coloring perspective, maybe a line work perspective. It is a little bit dirty, a little sketchy, but it is very different, though, if you actually compare the pages between this and Darkspace Wildfire. But again, a pretty interesting book. Check out Sean Lewis's Above Snakes. We're on issue number 3 right now. Pretty good run overall. Issue 1 was great. Issue number 2 I thought was fantastic. This issue slows it down a little bit, but provides a little bit more context about our main characters, which might be needed, maybe not. We'll see how it turns out in issue number 4 and above. All right, this next book is absolutely a masterpiece so far. I'm so excited for this book. Every time it comes out, we have Do a Powerbomb, issue number 4 from Daniel Warren Johnson, written and drawn by the great himself. And we have Mike Spicer, one of my all-time favorite colorists as well, on here. It's in Russ Wooten is on the letters. It's a great, great book. So we basically have this Mortal Kombat type situation, essentially in hell, but it's a big, real wrestling match, no staged, no nothing. And the winner of this tag team tournament gets to make a wish. And we have all these different teams from all these different dimensions, even in the world, our world itself, being invited to this thing. They're all extremely motivated to get that wish, and they all have compelling stories. So it's almost like you feel bad for these other teams because they have real reasons to be there. Of course, our main character here, she grew up in tragedy. Her mother was killed in the ring by this other wrestler. When she grows up, she's a wrestler just like her mom, very fearless, very powerful, and very charismatic. And she actually has to come up with a tag team partner for this tournament. And the only person around is the person that actually killed her mom in the ring. So there's a heck of a dynamic going on in there. There's some surprises in the story and the different characters that are involved, which I won't spoil for you because it's just a brilliant book in the way that they executed on that. But again, man, this book is flashy, it is raw, it is gritty, it's all about the wrestling. Although, if you're not a wrestling fan, I think there's so much story and compassion and like drive in this book, and just there's like moments of hopelessness in here, but there's also moments of just perseverance that they explore. And it's just such a great book in general. Another great thing about this is just like the scenery and the perspectives they take when they're doing some of their battles. I'll give you a little bit of a hint of what that looks like in here. It's just chaos in the paneling and in the wrestling itself. It's absolutely mind-blowing just trying to make that all make sense. There's all these weird close-ups and there's all these incredible wrestling moves. There's just so much detail in here. It's like, this is like his grand finale, you know, reading Murder Falcon and how crazy that was. This book kind of puts it to shame almost about how nuts it is and how much he can like squeeze into one panel, but it all makes sense. Again, there's just like a rawness to this. There's a grittiness to this. There's high stakes in here. The story is great. The characters are well done. It's a phenomenal book. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's issue number 4. Every issue of this book has been great so far. I cannot wait to keep reading this one. It's one of my favorite books out right now. Highly recommended. Check out Do a Powerbomb. Catch it in the trades, whatever you got to do. Get the single issues, whatever it is, get this book. I recommend it. All right, guys. So that's all I read this week, and those are my thoughts about those. Let me know what your favorite books of the week were down below in the comments. But as always, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos. I appreciate you so much. See you in the comments.